All right, well, welcome everyone. This is Lessons from the Field, where, as you know, we interview a diverse array of guests who have a common thread of passion for pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences. And today we're really happy to have Divya Vasudevan, who's a PhD from 2015. And she's now Senior Director for Oncology Strategy and Investor Relations at Agenus Pharmaceuticals. So Divya, thank you so much for being with us today. We're gonna go through some questions and keep it informal and light. And I know that our listeners, the students, alumni, friends of the college will really gain some valuable insight from your presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. And if you could just give us the 3-minute version of your career, since you don't have to start when you left here, but kind of from when you left to where you are now.
Well, thanks so much for having me here. First off, I'm delighted to be here and great to be part of this process. As you mentioned, I graduated in 2015. Afterwards, I was at UIC. I was at Dr. Doug Thomas's lab. My focus was in cancer epigenetics at that time, really studying the impact of nitric oxide on epigenetic pathways. So on a related note, after my PhD, I moved to Cornell, where I did a postdoc 2015, 2016, also focusing on an epigenetic pathway. And that was in the context of prostate cancer. I realized, over the course of my PhD and my postdoc that I was really enjoying science and understanding oncology, but I wanted to shift gears a little bit and be more on the drug development side of things. I acquired a lot of great science being on the research side, understanding biology, but I really wanted to take that and apply it more in the context of drug development. That's when I moved to Agenus. That was 2016. I actually moved because they needed me to come in there and establish a competitive intelligence function. So Agenus, for those of you who don't know, is a clinical stage biotech company that's developing a pipeline of immuno-oncology drugs. So these drugs essentially redirect the immune system to fight cancers. And this space has really, really taken off. I mean, the whole treatment paradigm in oncology has shifted since the advent of these immuno-oncology drugs. And a lot of that activity, it started sometime around the early 2000s, but really took off with the approval of the first PD-1 agents, which happened sometime around 2014. So when I started in 2016, that was when the field was really, really taking off, and there was a lot of activity happening in this space, and they needed someone who could come in and apply their science background, understand the data that was coming out in this space, and be able to contextualize it for how it might influence development decisions at Agenus. So that's really how I came into the picture, and that was 2016, and I've grown in capacity since. I started off really focusing on competitive intel, expanded from that point on to also influence portfolio strategy. And again, there's a lot of crosstalk between competitive intel and strategy with communications and investor relations. So I've had the opportunity to broaden what I lead at Agenus to also include those functions. So, grown with increasing roles and things to take on over the last 6 years, and it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, it sounds exciting, especially coming in just as this class of drugs is really ramping up, and it's on fire now. So
Yeah.
I'm sure you have a lot of work to do. One of the things our students often ask us about, or ask guests that we have about, is more the day-to-day kind of functions and like the details of what you do. And in the pharmaceutical industry, that varies across different functions, but maybe you could just fill us in a little bit on what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so on a daily basis, I like to think that a predominant amount of what I do stems from reviewing data, whether that's preclinical data that's coming out, whether that's clinical data, but I'm constantly reviewing data, whether it's coming out in peer-reviewed journals, whether it's companies posting press releases with data updates, whether it's medical conferences, congresses. So there are so many variety of sources that release data, and I'm trying to stay on top of all of it, because all of this clinical as well as preclinical data shift the treatment landscape, or could shift the treatment landscape in the future. So I'm not just reviewing the data, but I'm contextualizing the data to understand how it could impact our development strategy. And not just my own review of the data. A lot of my day-to-day is also spent in trying to listen and get feedback on what thought leaders in this space think of the data, because they're really who are going to be moving what the treatment landscape looks like. So I spent a lot of my day-to-day listening to those conversations as well. And then together, with all of that information in hand, I'm collaborating with various teams within the company, whether it's our clinical organization or a research organization or our commercial organization, and really communicating, okay, so this is what I'm seeing from external data, and what I'm hearing from thought leaders, and this is how some of these events could shift the space. So how can we plan our portfolio or our development strategy to account for some of these events? How do we anticipate them, and how would we make sure our development strategy accounts or buffers for some of these changes in the landscape? And then should there be shifts in the landscape, assess impact on our development strategy. So a lot of what I do in the day-to-day also involves working with a lot of these cross-functional teams and having those conversations and ensuring that we're on top of what's happening in the space, and our development strategy is competitive and reflective of the reality of what's taking place in IO. IO is something I'll probably use throughout our conversation, just short for immuno-oncology.
Okay, yeah. A lot of times we do get the techie lingo on these interviews that doesn't always translate to the audience, but thank you.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds really exciting, the work that you're doing, especially being able to bounce that off of other people in your organization who are doing similar or related things, and see where those all coalesce. But given that you're kind of looking at the field and thinking about the future so much, where do you see oncology going, especially in this particular therapeutic area?
In oncology, there's a lot of of course, targeted therapies are one thing, but what we're seeing specifically in IO is approved agents which target a very specific pathway called PD-1, PD-L1. They've worked across, gosh, I think I've lost count of the number of indications in which they've been approved now. They work across such a diverse array of patients. However, we're starting to see that patients are relapsing on therapy. They're only effective in a small proportion of patients. And a lot of this, of course, is due to resistance mechanisms developing. And we're starting to see that there are new combination therapies which are being developed. And these combination therapies have the potential to benefit more patients, but beyond that, also be able to sustain the benefit for a longer period of time. So these, so the responses that we're seeing are not short-lived, which, with chemotherapy, I think patients respond initially, but the responses tend to be short-lived. So combination therapies is really where we think the space is going to be moving, because it can help broaden patient reach and durability. But I think beyond just combination therapies, it's matching the right combinations to patients. So companies that have platforms that are able to identify the right combinations and match them to the right patient, that's really going to be key in successfully providing durable benefit to various patients. And I'd like to think that that's really where the future is headed as well.
Great. Yeah, such an important and changing area. It's hard to keep up with. So, it's, you started off in the lab, whether it was into college here or in MBRB with your advisor, Dr. Thomas. And you're in a very different kind of area now, looking at this class of drugs and kind of strategies and where it's going. What kind of advice would you give people as they are kind of exploring where they want to go in a career, and you know, what were some of the experiences that you had that helped with your career exploration and lead you to where you are now?
You know, one of the things that I always encourage people is to get exposed to as many opportunities as you can from the get-go. I was lucky to have a mentor at UIC who supported me through the process. You know, I was able to take some time in 2013 and spend time at Regeneron Pharmaceuticals for an internship, which is a totally different experience because I was going from being in an academic lab to really being in, you know, a pharmaceutical company where things operate very differently. And also I was moving from an environment where I was doing basic research to an environment where I was actually in the translational sciences group. So this group is really thinking about how do we understand which patients are most likely to be benefiting from this therapy based on all of the work that our research team has done. So how can we really take what's happening within R&D and apply it in the clinic? And it was a little bit of a different group and different setting to be in than I was used to. So it got me to broaden my horizons a little bit. And you know, I came back, and in 2014, the tech transfer office supported this organization called Enterprise Works, and they were working again with a lot of labs within UIC, you know, across the broader college, university, to work with investigators and see how they might be able to launch some technologies which were developed in their labs, and you know, maybe really put them on the map as its own company. And so how do we get these technologies on the path to commercialization as a real you know, separate entity or an organization? And that involved, again, interacting with these investigators, understanding the space they were trying to go into, the you know, what their target audience was, what the market looked like, what the competition looked like. So that type of market research is, again, very different and offered a totally different perspective than the work I was doing in the lab. So all of this, you know, experience definitely broadened my exposure and taught me what are the different types of opportunities I could apply my PhD background and take my career forward. So, and I was able to get a flavor for all of this because I was able to seek these opportunities early. So I always recommend that if you have the opportunity to do so, to seek those opportunities and you know, really go for it. Again, I was also, when I came to Agenus too, you know, where biotech, for a biotech our size, the advantage is you really have the opportunity to get broad exposure across various functions. So I've spent time here in communications and investor relations, and it's really given me an understanding of, you know, the biotech pharmaceutical business as a whole. And it taught me how people within various functions think and, you know, what's important to them, how they may interact. So it's made my dialogue across these very cross-functional teams much easier. And, you know, in the role that I am in right now today, it involves a lot of crosstalk with various functional teams. And all of this exposure has just put me in a better place in building those relationships and interacting with them. So it's really helped me, I think, from a professional perspective in easing how I can execute my day-to-day. But it's also taught me along the course of my career what I enjoy the most, and you know, what I want to do, and more importantly, what I don't want to do. So it's taught me where I really want to focus my career development. So just through all of this, I would say, again, you know, if you have the opportunity to seek out being in different functions within biopharma, I would highly encourage it. In all likelihood, you're going to be applying your science in some way, shape, or form, even though it's very different than what you might be doing in your current research. And of course, you have the opportunity to also go into research within biotech and pharma. But I think there's a lot to learn from the different environments and opportunities they provide.
Great, yeah. We were just talking today about the internships that we kind of facilitate in pharmaceutical industry for our PhD and PharmD students, and how important that is. So you're a testament to that, it sounds like. And when you were here, did you work in OTM as a student, or was
Well,
that
just
just
with
a separate?
enterprise. Sorry, just with
Okay,
enterprise works. Yeah.
I see. Okay, but yeah, that I'm sure was very eye-opening as well. I think, yeah, I love what you said. The lesson being that it's not just when you're at school either, that you continue to do that exploration and learn as you move through your career. So thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the biotech industry, I think I've come to see that a lot of places are very supportive of nurturing and developing talent. And, should you demonstrate the right skills and demonstrate the right interest, I think there's lots of opportunities for growth laterally, not necessarily just within your area of expertise. So you can always seek out areas to grow and branch out. And I, if that's something that is important to someone, I think there's opportunity there to do it, and the learning experience from it can be tremendous.
Yeah, that's good news for all of our students interested in industry and in other careers. So I can tell that where you are in your career, you've taken on more and more leadership, it sounds like, as well. And so one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because it's something that we try to also think about for our students, is to what extent they get exposed to or get leadership skills while they're here in school. Was there anything that while you were here that you wish you would have gotten more of, whether it's opportunities for leadership or other opportunities that we could work on?
To me, the most important, one of the most important, if not the most important leadership skill is communication. And, I think of communication in two parts. It's how you communicate and how you listen, right? There's two pieces to it. The most effective leaders, I like to believe, are those that communicate succinctly and confidently. There's something about that style of communicating that I think really hooks on who they're speaking with and influences them to buy into the narrative. And I think that's so important. And I think the second thing is listening. You build relationships by listening, and you can learn so much about what the other person is looking for by listening. And I mean, I think to the extent that there are opportunities or courses, which I'm sure there are many, to be able to support bringing out those qualities, it can be great. But I also think that those are qualities you can learn every day, just from real life, right? So, but to me, I think communication is probably one of the most influential leadership skills.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. One of the most important skills, period. I think you've already answered this question, so I'm embarrassed to even ask, but because what you've described in the short time we've been together is just how you've taken advantage of the opportunities that you've had in the environment that you're in to continue to build your own knowledge and experience and expertise, which of course is key to a successful career and being able to do that continuously. But you have any further comments you want to say on how people can think about that and the importance of continuing to stay on top of your game, so to speak, stay relevant?
To me, it's been a lot of reading. I read a lot about what's happening in this space, even if it's not relevant to my immediate line of work. And it's helped me sometimes down the road in ways that I wouldn't have anticipated. So I think reading is good. If there's an opportunity to build relationships, I think that's really helpful too, because you never know how you might cross paths with someone down the road. It may just be a cup of coffee today, and you may be like, why should I, take the time for a cup of coffee? But I think that these are relationships that you can carry for life, and you learn so much from your peers. And again, I think that just helps you build up who you are in both your personal and professional life. So I highly encourage just, building relationships, listening and learning from what others have to say, and reading a lot. I think those have been really helpful for me.
Good. Yeah, that sounds like great advice. Well, I guess my last question for you is kind of on how do you balance your job and life generally. You live in New York. It sounds like incredibly busy. You're working with investors and many others. Crucial decisions are being made based on the data that you're gathering, and I'm sure you put in really long hours. How do you keep that all in perspective and stay stress-free and so forth?
I'm still working on that. I don't know that I've quite mastered it yet. I just try to compartmentalize my personal and professional life as best as I can. I think there are trade-offs, and sometimes the trade-offs are over the weekday, but I do try to guard my weekend so that I can spend as much time with my family as possible, and also re-energize myself to be a better person when Monday comes around. And I think everybody respects and understands that and is supportive of it. But I always tell my team that you need to take, that's a decision, or that's an initiative that you need to sort of push and lead on.
Mm-hmm.
You need to understand what's important to you and what you need to protect and where you want to draw your boundaries. And so, I think as long as you're performing and delivering on your corporate goals, I think everyone's, very understanding that you need to accommodate and, balance other things in life, beyond the office. So, but it definitely does take a little bit of, personal choice and self-control.
Yeah. No, I like your answers. The compartmentalization piece of it, something I haven't really heard before, but it's so true that and be protective of that time, and, but separating it also, it makes it easier in a way. So thank you. I'm sure people get a lot out of that and all of your answers to these questions. And if you don't mind, I'm sure a lot of our students will have questions. There's so much interest in careers in pharmaceutical industry from our students, both graduate and PharmD students, and I'm sure they'd love to be able to have the chance to talk to you. And you're doing something that's a little bit different than some of our previous alumni that we have alumni that we've had on this program before. So very interesting. Congratulations too on what you've done so far, and looking forward to see what you do from here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been great to reconnect with UIC after all these years, and certainly very special place for me. And I'm glad to be able to help, and happy to answer any questions that come along as well.
You want to give a shout out to anybody still here?
I don't know that anyone is still here from my class, but definitely shout out to all the professors and everyone that I've worked with in the office who really helped me through my time over there. Yeah. I don't know that it's fair for me to call out anyone.
Yeah, true.
But really appreciate all the support that I got from the college during my time there.
Great. Well, this has really been fun, and I'm sure we'll be hearing from some of our students. So thanks again for taking time this afternoon.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely.